Good evening and welcome to our meeting this evening. The purpose of the meeting is to talk to a gentleman that is here, and Mr. Mitnick, if you'd like to come up and sit with us at the table. Mr. Mitnick represents his company called Just Training Solutions, and Mr. Mitnick has a very impressive resume, and as you know, the Board of Selectmen requested that Mr. Mitnick assist us in looking at the ramifications of the cartel report, which we were receiving I believe 2 weeks ago, I think it's safe to say, and it was 29 pages. So it was a long report with a lot of interesting information that was both, I would say, both good and bad, and the selectmen on a 3-0 vote voted to invite you, Mr. Mitnick, to our meeting in hopes of talking about possibly hiring you to review that report or to review the circumstances and any critical information that may pertain to that report. So perhaps you could start off by giving us your background.
Sure.
I think that would be important.
Sure. Well, it's a pleasure to be here again. My name is Edward Mitnick, and I am the Executive Director of Just Training Solutions, which is my business that I started approximately 10 years ago. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing over 32 years now, focusing almost entirely on labor and employment issues. I was city solicitor for the city of Holyoke for a number of years. I then went to private practice and did primarily labor and employment work for cities and towns, as well as other employers. My claim to fame, I guess, is I worked for many years as a hearing officer for the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination, just adjudicating harassment, discrimination, retaliation claims. Last 10 years have been primarily focusing on my business, Just Training Solutions, and that is really split into two different sectors. About maybe 55–60% of my work is doing training workshops for employers, including a lot of cities and towns, on anything related to harassment, discrimination, hiring practices, being successful managers, performance management. And approximately 40–45% is to do internal investigations, similar to the matter that we want to talk about today. Investigation, typically complaints, harassment, discrimination, inappropriate conduct. A lot of my clients are municipalities, given my municipal background.
I would ask you, would have to ask you again, if with regards to Mrs. Hassan and Mr. Wilson, myself, have you ever met us before?
First time I had a conversation with you, Chairman, this approximately 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
You called me about possibly retaining me, and then we met this afternoon, and other than that, that's the only contact I've had, to my knowledge, with anybody in the town of Shirley, and nor have I done any work for the town of Shirley.
Okay, I think that's important for the record too, that one of the criteria that we had as a board was to make sure that whoever we hired had no contact with any of the selectmen or the town. We thought that was appropriate.
No.
Having said that, I have your contract, which I think after you first explain what you think it is you should do after we discuss this afternoon the nature of the problem.
Yeah.
And I want to emphasize to everybody that the Board of Selectmen directed me to talk to Mr. Mitnick to find out as to whether or not he was someone that would be not only capable of doing our job in viewing that report and looking into the problem we perceived, but also it was important that the board wanted to get a general idea of who you were and where we were going with this. So that having been said, could you talk to us about what we talked about and what you think is the way to attack this particular problem?
Sure. Well, my understanding is approximately 2 weeks ago you received Jean Hurdle's report. And I should say at the outset that I know Jean Hurdle. She's a professional colleague of mine, and I believe she actually contacted me over a year ago to actually discuss certain ramifications of this case, although I didn't know the particulars. That being said, so my understanding is, based on what you told Mr. Chairman, that the board has concerns about what Ms. Hurdle had found in her report, the specific findings regarding members of the police department. And I want to state at the outset that you do not want me to, nor would I be engaged into redoing that investigation. Jean Hurdle is highly professional, highly competent. I refer a lot of clients to her. She's eastern part of the state, I'm western part of the state, so we don't really mix too often. But that being said, she was hired to do an unbiased outside external investigation. She made her findings, and unless there's additional evidence or new evidence related to those particular allegations, I think you should accept the report as written and accept those findings as the findings of an outside unbiased investigator. To the extent that there are any allegations or matters raised in Ms. Hurdle's report that were beyond the scope of her investigation that she did not address, then certainly I would entertain investigating those matters to the extent we feel necessary.
Correct. We talked about page 19 of the report, in the Hurdle report,
Yeah.
and that was an alarming bit of information that we didn't receive, if you will. It was not addressed, and yet it seems to be something that obviously needs to be addressed. And I guess my question is, how would you go about that?
Well, there's an allegation that the police chief failed to investigate a serious incident of police brutality, and certainly that is a matter that I think is proper for the board as the appointing authority for the police chief and the executive authority of the town of Shirley to investigate matter, and that is typically the type of stuff I do investigate.
Is there anything else in that report where you did say you don't want to get into contradicting or supporting what Mrs. Hurdle said? Is there anything in that report also that jogs you to the point where you need to relook at something or investigate something that you feel wasn't properly addressed?
I cannot comment this time, only for lack of better terms, I haven't been able to sink my teeth into it.
Okay.
I know you brought up that attention, and that was certainly jumped out at me because it was one thing that Ms. Hurdle specifically said this was beyond the scope of her investigation. It was not defined as it. So to the extent there are any other allegations in here which Ms. Hurdle had raised but did not investigate because they were beyond the scope of her investigation, those certainly matters we could look at.
Some of the charges in that report were never verified. One of them I'm thinking about was the one that's in that report on the so-called tablet that everybody talked about. And I think that tablet is important too because there's conflicting evidence in regards to the report. The report says that the tablet was not used properly, but at the same time, one of the senior sergeants says that there was nothing to it. And so that needs to be looked at also, I think. I think that's a side issue that's of great importance and needs to be looked at. Can you give us and there's a lot of paperwork that I understand it, but can you give us any kind of a time frame?
That's not a dumb question. It's actually a very fair question. It's a question that we investigators hate to answer. Only because we can only go where the evidence takes us. By that I mean I've had certain matters where it's pretty straightforward, interview two people, I can come back to the board within a week and tell them findings. I've had other matters, it starts out simple and then once you get into it, all these new allegations come involved, and before you know it, we're investigating 15 different issues, and it could take weeks if not months. I've had investigations where would have literally have taken me 4 months to complete, involving, I think the largest amount was 39 different witnesses, voluminous documentation. So obviously that can be problematic. Also, to be honest, I have other clients and I do my work all over the country, so I'm always getting on a plane, so sometimes it's an issue with my schedule, sometimes it's an issue with the witness's schedule. So I would like to give you a definitive answer of how long this would take, but unfortunately I can't. I have no idea how long it took Jean Hurdle to do this investigation. To give you kind of an idea, I imagine it was weeks, if not months.
It was at least 4 months.
Yeah. So I'll give you that out as kind of a perspective.
You had said to me that it wasn't your intention to peruse that report, but you did say that you had a list of people that you thought needed to be interviewed.
Well, I always start my interviews by trying to get background information. Who's got the information regarding what's going on? And that would include the town council, town administrator, the acting police chiefs. So certainly those would usually be the top information to get feedback, and that would help me develop a plan in terms of who specifically to interview regarding the particulars of the matters I'm investigating.
I went on your website, and I looked over your website, and it's very impressive.
Thank you.
You also mentioned you do training.
I do a lot of training, yes.
Can you explain the type of training that you would be,
Sure.
that you offer? Only because I think, if I look at everything that I was looking at, training, I think, is a big issue or lack of training.
Sure. I do training workshops, and I said most of my practice is actually devoted to training workshops on anything related to employment law, but in particular, I do a lot of harassment prevention workshops. I do a lot of workshops for supervisors on discrimination prevention. I do a lot on respect in the workplace, sensitivity in the workplace. I do a lot of training on diversity and inclusion. You name it, if it's related to employment or labor law, I probably have done it. So, and in particular, given my background with municipalities, I do a lot of workshops for municipalities. I've spoken on these subjects at the Mass Municipal Association regular meetings, etc. So, anything related to employment law. Now, just so we're clear, if you're retaining me to do an investigation, I would not be the appropriate person to do training.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and a lot of times, to be fairly frank, when Gene Hurdle does an investigation, and as a result, the employer wants to train a workshop, oftentimes she refers me. And I often do the same thing for her.
I will tell you that beyond reading reports,
Yeah.
that's my knowledge of police departments
Sure.
and such. I am not a police officer. I do not pretend to be a police officer in any shape, form, or fashion. I do feel that as a person who read the reports, I felt there was a problem. And I felt that there is a need to really look into it and find out exactly what's going on.
Sure. And I comment on it is, I'm not a police officer either. I'm a lawyer, an investigator. And my role and responsibility should retain me to do investigation is to determine whether any of your employees violated your policies. I mean, that should be a focus. A lot of times, employers want to hire me to determine if anybody's violating the law. And, really the only individuals who can make that determination are a judge or a jury, or a hearing officer or an arbitrator. And that's not my focus. My focus would be to do what we call a fact-finding investigation. What are the facts? What's going on? I would have no authority over anybody. Again, my role is not as an arbitrator or a judge, a hearing officer. And what I would do is present that facts to you as the board, as the appointing authority, and you, in your infinite wisdom, would have to decide what to do. Maybe the right thing to do is take some concrete action. Maybe the right thing to do is do nothing, but that would be your decision, not mine.
You, then, for the purposes of the administrator, and she just gave an excellent report last night on the budget, so she's now thinking, there goes my budget. But anyway, if you could give us a breakdown of the cost.
Sure. So my fee structure, and I have a particular fee structure just for municipalities, it's $250 an hour, $125 an hour for travel. I do not require a retainer in any way, shape, or form. I bill monthly, and in terms of how much the cost, it would depend. A lot of it is also going to depend on, I can spend hours doing the investigation, interviewing witnesses, point of view, reviewing documentation, and then the second part of it is the rewriting of the report, which can be, Gene Hurdle's report is 29 pages. I just got concluded preparing a 60-page report. That can require a great deal of time. And there's an old rule of thumb, and it's a very, very loose rule of thumb, that it generally requires, if you count the amount of time you've done doing the interview investigation, it's usually 2 times that amount to write the report. And that's a general rule of thumb. It doesn't always abide by that, but that at least to give you some ballpark. But, frankly, there are one particular incident that we've talked about here. A lot of my initial investigation is going to find out who has the pertinent information, who are the witnesses to the particular incidents. As unlike other situations where we may have had, 2 people in a particular situation where we had witnesses, where it's easy to identify who I need to speak to. At this point, I think I need to spend a little bit more time initially just focusing on who I need to speak to.
And so far, you tell us it would be town council, town administrator, acting police chief, and Sergeant Cromwell.
That sounds correct.
Sounds correct.
Okay.
Okay. And anybody involved in the incident with the use of excessive force would be correct also?
Correct.
Right.
That's logically, it
Right.
makes sense.
Right. That having been said, Holly?
I don't have any other questions. So I wouldn't hire you tonight, just so you know.
No, that's okay.
I would want to sit and discuss with Jimmy and Rico the whole entire thing and understand it. And that would be my thing. Like I said, it's not an area that if you wanted to ask me about collecting taxes, I could recite law for you, but to ask you about investigating or doing any of that, I can't do that at all. So, I would really want to look into a little bit more. I have concerns, just so you know, and I've stated my concerns over the report. I have a lot of concerns over the report. And that basically is where I stand right now.
One of the things I want to emphasize is that when you bring in someone like Gene Hurley, you bring in someone like me who does a report, you've got to live with it. That's the bottom line. It's even, unlike judicial opinions, which you can appeal, you can't appeal an investigative report. And Gene Hurley becomes your key witness, if you will, in any action that may be taken against any employees regarding incidents arose here, or any time there's legal action against the town for any matters addressed in this report. She is your key witness. She is your expert witness. And that's so when we develop a relationship between an employer and an investigator, you've got to realize that you're really bringing me in to be the expert witness. Now, who knows what the investigation will find, whether it will find serious violations, minor violations, or no violations. And you have to be prepared that those are the potential in terms of what the outcomes could be.
So, in the case of Gene Hurdle's report, Gene Hurdle is the key witness in everything that was written in that report.
Yes and no, depending on the circumstances. I don't want to get too involved in the legal mechanisms, but she made certain findings.
Yes.
She made certain findings, and you do not want to pay me, nor do you want to go down that road of reinvestigating the issues that Gene Hurdle had.
No, I don't. That I didn't. I would say, well, we've already done that. Therefore, let's move on with something else. So no, that I don't think that's what I'm looking for you to do.
Well, the other thing to be careful of is that as much as I am a lawyer, and I have been city solicitor, and provided legal counsel to many cities and towns over the years, that's not what you're hiring me for.
Right.
You have a town council. So would be retaining me to investigate allegations of inappropriate conduct by members of the police department.
Right.
And having said that, I think that was the goal of the selectmen, was to, as you know, and as you said, talking to you this afternoon, the police department is under the control of the selectmen because it's a weak chief, not a strong chief. And having said that, we're very concerned about that report. That's what. And the other thing is, we never got to see that report though recently.
Right.
And that in itself caused us to sit and vote 3-0 to look into it. So I think, what would be your timeframe to let us notify you as to whether or not you wish to do that? That would be question one. Question two is, I guess the other question I would want is, do you recommend that the 3 selectmen sit in a room in an executive session to discuss the menu of what we attempt to accomplish?
Well, again, I'm being careful here because I'm not town council and I want to advise you, I used to deal with these issues all the time, and that's why I no longer represent towns, because I was sick of dealing with public record and open meeting law issues. So I want to be very careful about that. But certainly, generally speaking, if you're talking about a particular investigative matter, you're talking about particular personnel issues, I generally believe that's appropriate for executive session.
The only thing that town council, Brian, I don't know if you know Brian Mason,
I don't.
has indicated that if we were to do that, we'd have to notice the people that we were speaking of.
But we wouldn't, I don't think we'd be there to mention names.
Well, this-
Notify them, not
Well,
you said, okay, I want
well,
to
this-
say no, okay.
If I can take a step back. Once you retain me to do an investigation, what I would specifically ask the board to do is nominate someone to be a spokesperson and interact with me. I would not feel it to be really necessary to speak to the board unless a pertinent issue would come up or I'm ready to present my findings. So I don't really see the need, maybe town council or you think differently, to actually have regular meetings with the board. I mean, once you give me the license to go, I'm going. And then I'll provide feedback to the designee as necessary, and I'll come before the board when I'm ready to make my findings.
I'm thinking.
I know, see.
You know, like I said, I really, it's not an area I'm very good in. And I would like to talk and hear what Jimmy has to say, because this is an area that they have dealt with over the years.
Sure.
It's not an area,
Sure.
an area that I'm very good in. So I see where you're coming from, and I understand where you're coming from, and you're not here to give us legal advice. You're here to do an investigation and come to us with the findings of your investigation. You're not going to redo the hurdle report, which I think is important, because we already paid for that, and we don't need you to redo that. There is an area that was out of her scope of investigation, and that probably you do have to look at. And really, truthfully, I would want to go back and think it through a little bit.
That's fine.
And that's where I stand, just so you know.
Okay.
I do things systematically.
I'm
Yeah,
fine.
and really, truthfully, I do it, like I said, I went to your website, I read your website, the cities and towns that you've dealt with, which seems to be, you did Framingham, you did something in Framingham.
Framingham is actually a regular client of mine who I've done both investigations and training work for.
Yeah, and Chelsea.
Yes, done a lot of work. Training work for the Chelsea Fire Department.
Yeah, and there were a number of cities and towns that I got on there and I looked at, and that would be where I would go. I would want to.
Sure.
I would live.
And I would totally understand if you felt you really want to go in a different direction or you want someone with different temperament. That's fine with me as well. I was asked to do here, and I thought it's a courtesy I would be.
No, I appreciate you coming out too. I want it, like I said, I want to hear. So I've heard Rico and I've heard you, and I want to hear Jimmy.
Yeah.
And then from there, I think that's how we move forward, is one step at a time by listening to what everybody has to say.
That's wise.
Like I said, I like what I say. Your website's very impressive. It's nice to know, where you're coming from and what you think we should do, and we won't ask you for any legal advice.
And if you want particular references from particular clients and, town managers, selectmen members, whoever, we have to provide that as well.
I think what's really important about the way we're doing this is, we didn't see this report, as I said, until recently. And this board tries to be very deliberate in our decisions. I think we know where we want to go, but to get there, we need, I think she's right, if Mr. Wilson was ill, if he comes in, we can put that on the agenda for next week, and I can notify you one way or the other.
Absolutely.
But I think it is important to note that I think we've hired someone that has absolutely no connection with the town in any way. I think that's extremely important, so that if this is approved by the board, we can get on with it, because we did vote that we need to do this, we need to investigate this. That was a 3-0 vote, so. And in the meantime, the chief is on administrative leave, so we don't want to leave him out there forever. We need to make a decision on that, so we need to get this done. So Monday night will be on the agenda. The three of us will talk about it, and I'll get back to you Monday.
That sounds wonderful.
If they choose to have someone else on the
Yep.
board deal with you, that's fine too, whatever. Okay.
Sounds good.
Hey, Patricia, you got any questions? Okay. Listen, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay.
Take care.
All right. I'm not going to take any questions, because we've been working on this thing for like 4 days now, and night and day, and we're
You've
just,
been working on it 4 days, I have.
yeah. Anyway, we get everything done here. We'll just wait now and see Monday night if Mr. Midnick is hired, and if so, we'll notify the board through Patrice, will notify the media or whatever. Good night. Whatever we have.
Thank you.
Okay? All right,
Mr.
thank you very much.
I move to adjourn at 6:26 PM.
Okay, very good. I vote yes. I second it, and I vote yes.
I vote aye.
Thank you.